Now I'm talking, right? It's like I get
It's like,
that makes me.
whatever, whatever with the
It's just the
talk.
same thing. I need it to be the same thing, right? Like just
Um, so I have very limited I listen to the New York Times daily podcast level comprehension of the FTX shit, and I'm also just lightly like, does this play into anti-Semitism? Because isn't this nigga's name Bankman Fried? It's like there's a couple little levels. I mean, I know about it, but there's levels of it where I'm just like, yo, so y'all just be letting niggas do anything now, huh? Like what exactly is this FTX scandal, and like what do you know about it?
okay. Here's the thing. I'm gonna be forthright in saying this is a little bit hard to explain
Okay.
because you have to understand that nobody has transparency on the actual real issue. Like on the real, if we were
Mm,
talking about it like at a even the experts are
right.
like trying to figure out what's going on here,
Right.
right? So this is opaque on top of opaque on top of opaque, right?
That's promising.
But I think I'll start at the easiest level.
Okay.
It's like if you were in junior high school and there's two niggas who sell candy real hard, like they're
Mhm.
nice at it, and one of them is nicer than the other. And because of that, they like lend people money, candy. Like they got people selling candy for them. Sometimes if people need a cookie, they gotta go to you, but you gotta bring the money back,
Like
right?
they control the candy marketplace.
Right.
Yeah.
They're the banks though of your school. More importantly, they're the bank, meaning where you go to get actual money or to trade. If you need the highest valued commodity in your school, they're the person you go through for it, right?
Right. But then so they control, like, all right, so the nigga selling the candy, it's like if the nigga selling the candy was the teacher. The teacher who actually also gets it from the distributor. Like it's like there's students selling candy and like there's like five teachers selling the candy.
Well, here, I mean, this it's actually even a little weirder than that, right? Because, okay, to go back to we don't know who the candy comes from actually, right?
Mm,
And one of the kids like wants to keep it that way, and the other kid is like, "Nah, you can't do that." The teachers are okay, so there's teachers that's in on it, and there's teachers
yeah.
that's not, and you don't know who's who.
What?
And one of the kids is like, "Yo, you got to keep it anonymous. The whole point of this thing is anonymity."
Yeah. Like it
And
doesn't
the other
matter where the
kid,
candy comes from. Just like give them the candy.
and the other one is like, "Nah, but this is growing now, and in order for it to grow, it's so all the teachers know about it now, and they're like, and we're like, somebody's got to get the attention and shit like that because not everything is on the up and up yet,
Right,
right? Because
right, right.
it's all happened without anybody
Yeah.
really
And the teachers are like, we would be remiss if we didn't at
get a piece
least
of this
try
candy
to regulate it.
and also get a piece of this candy. Hold on, we got to get a piece of this candy. People can't be selling candy, buying candy, and we don't know.
Yeah,
No, we
yeah,
got to know
yeah.
and regulate, yes, and also tax,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Like,
yes, yes, yes. Which is what regulation really is when we're talking about it. That's what
right?
regulation is.
That's the right. That's the
Mhm.
actual right that the government has, right?
Yeah,
It's the I forget exactly what it is, but it's like to serve because of those things, because of those regulatory, they get the right to tax.
yeah.
Um, okay, so the kid who doesn't want to tell everybody, who doesn't want to disclose who's buying, where the candy comes from,
Yeah.
is really, oh, owns 20% of the other kid's candy. So he owns his own candy company and
And
20%
he
of the other
owns the
kid's
main.
candy.
Yeah, got you, got you, got you, got you, got you,
Right?
got you. He owns the pipeline, and he owns different candies from different.
The pipe he has a greater market share of the pipeline.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah,
owns
but
the pipeline.
almost like an immeasurable amount more. Like from
Yes.
what I understand
Yes.
about
Yes.
the
Oh yeah.
FTX shit, is like the person who were in question is like, it's not just like, oh, I own a bigger piece of the pie. It's like I own a really large chunk of this pie because I have the marketplace.
So to not be vague anymore, that person is CZ, right? Because
Yeah,
even that name is vague, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yo, everything about this shit is vagaries on vagaries, right?
How is your name Bankman though? Like, how is your name, your literal
Agreed.
actual name, the Bankman? Like, it's that's
And we know how.
yeah,
How does somebody become? How do you get the last name Smith?
yeah, right,
How do
right.
you right?
Somebody
That's
with a book.
how.
Yeah,
That's how. Anyway, so he the kid who wants to keep it anonymous.
yeah.
Uh
First of all, if I'm Cairo right now, I'm lost. Like, I'm just like, I heard candy, and then I bounced. I bounced
yeah,
out.
that's what I'm saying. And it hasn't even gotten vague yet. This is actually all pretty direct.
Yeah.
Then we have to get on to the fact that this is all built on an infrastructure of a cryptocurrency, right? Like,
Yes, yes.
so what we're talking about are tokens, right?
Mhm.
Like, there are fungible tokens.
Mm-hmm. Non-fungible tokens.
There's cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
There are fungible tokens. There are non-fungible tokens, right?
Right, right.
All of those things trade on varying amounts of
It's like secure data, right?
equity. No, it's actually
Oh,
how much money, how much currency has been transferred into that asset
gotcha.
that collateralizes it. How
Okay.
collateralized this is asset versus how, because okay,
Like, how backed is it? Like, because when I hear the word collateralized, I just want to make it for viewers. Like, what does that mean? Well, how backed is it?
how much money does it have? How much in right now? How much American dollars is it denominated out to?
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
Here's why I say it's actually extremely opaque. Because this all seems, it's like, oh, it's so crazy. It's so crazy. It's like, well, do you know how we print currency?
Very similarly, right? It's the same concept. It's the same concept.
We print we print a Federal Reserve note
Mhm.
and a bond at the same time.
Okay.
Right? You have to, because it's debt, and
Yeah.
you're just charging, and the currency is created to be placed to discharge that debt. You're
It's like a
saying,
promise of value,
right, this
right?
is the
That's what
debt of
currency
it.
is. Like,
This
it's
is
no
what
longer
you get.
bartering one thing for another. It's saying the promise of value based on these transactions is what money is. Money is the idea of value because we know these things are being exchanged. Let's give it this thing as a record of the exchange.
So in the same way, okay, so so a non-fungible token doesn't have significant backing yet, right? So it's like if I put up an NFT, NFT, right?
Yeah.
It has no inherent value until money comes into it,
Right,
right?
right,
And
right.
so the original printing of Federal Reserve notes was backed by gold,
Yeah.
right? You could transfer that because this was a promise of payment. It's a promissory note, right?
Mhm.
It had to be backed by something. It didn't have this paper money didn't have any inherent value,
Right, of course not.
right? Just the same way my NFT has no inherent value.
Right.
It has to be reinforced by a value, right?
Mhm.
but we've removed the gold backing and the silver backing, right? That's
Right,
common knowledge, right? That's
right, a
common
long time
understanding.
ago.
So it's that's like an NFT that has no money, yet is still being spent. People are spending
Yeah,
it as value when nobody has bought into it.
got
Okay.
you.
But it continues to work based on the principle of the fractional reserve,
Hmm.
which says that it allows you to multiply the money supply by 10 because
Okay.
the bank only has to ever keep 10% of a
Whatever
deposit on
it
hand,
is. Right, got you.
right? So they can make so let's say they keep all the money, then they can make 10 times that in loans,
Okay.
right? It expands the economy. That's the thinking of it, right? And people generally have some people have an understanding that the fractional reserve rate is throughout our lifetime been about 10, right?
Okay.
Do you know what the fractional reserve rate is right now?
I would say it's got to be like way less because we're like inflation's crazy over the years, so I think it's got to be way less.
It's zero.
Yeah, I'm like it's like
It
money
is
don't mean shit, my man. Like
zero. It is nothing. It
that's that
is your bank
trickology,
has to
boy.
keep
That's that
none of your money.
trickonomics, boy. Trickonomics, baby.
It's your bank has to keep zero of the money that you put in there,
Okay.
right? So, okay, it seems so opaque what's happening with Sam Bankman-Fried and CZ. It's like, what's going on?
Right, right.
Not anything meritably different than what you
Nothing different.
spend every day.
Right, right. Because there's I would say parallel institutions and regulators already through our current currency system, right? Like there's people who've done what he's done and are well established and have done it with paper money for a long, long time. And he's just like, well, technically, none of this means anything. And like, why are you coming after me? I mean, and I can understand why him being the kid with the candy who also owns the candy pipeline would be like, yo, there's mad at people who own the candy pipeline and who have the candy. Like, there's a lot of people like that. So
And
why
you
am I the
need
guy?
people. Hold on. Do you all understand this pipeline? Do any of you understand this candy pipeline?
Right, right, right,
Are
right.
you are you comfortable with the American dollar? Hey, Congressman, tell the truth. How comfortable are you with the American dollar over the next 25 years?
Right, 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 right.
Right? Like, so this is also a part of how America works.
Mhm.
Things happen and then get regulated.
So is this mainly an American thing? Like how this scandal is going down where boys getting kind of like slapped on the wrist about having all the crypto? Like, is this an American thing? Is it relegated to an American sort of problem and enforcement?
Of course not,
Right,
but this so it's like there's no international regulation of any of this, first of all, right? So there's
right.
no way to correlate
Which
regulations yet.
seems like a good question to ask too. Like, why is there no international regulatory body? That seems like a relevant
Because
question.
China is also obviously a meaningful player in
Yeah.
this, but is there something for them to regulate? Are they going to? Right? Do you when you if you win the championship, you usually don't like go back over the rules and see if there's any times it might not have, right? Like you just
Right.
go, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, sucks for FTX, right?
Right. Right.
Um, you got rolled over, especially in the agenda of the fact that like this is all comes down to figuring out the world trying to figure out ways to no longer denominate values in the dollar.
Right. Right. Right.
China has an interest in that. Bitcoin is essentially that's That's it. That is the fundamental value is that the dollar is a stock of the American company.
Yes.
And the way it does business.
Yes.
And you can't not agree with that when you use it.
Yeah, it's
agreement to
an
the
implicit
contract.
Yeah, that's true.
It's contract. It's a contract. It's an acceptance of all these other contracts that validate me using it right.
So it's like if I buy the candy, right? I'm bought in. I'm like the candy system, the price, who I'm getting it from is like, nah, you getting your candy. So like we don't have to go into all that. Like, did you get chocolate or did you not? Like, are you eating chocolate? If you want a box, can you get a box of it? Yes. So after that,
it's just what's happening. That's what's happening right now. That is what's happening right now, right?
Yes,
we are eating the candy.
Yes.
And we're using this to buy and all that. So these are things that are like, how can we not? So it's like, for instance, a way of getting out of that is like China is often paying foreign workers in yuan. Like, nah, just you're not, nope, right? It's to reinforce that we're not going to reinforce that.
Yes.
We're going to establish something else that has a value and that has commerce happening, right? That's the thing. So now what we haven't even addressed yet is the political complications of Sam Bankman-Fried.
Before we do, what makes you want to address this and what makes you want to make it plain to people?
I've often heard examples of people say, "Oh, it don't make no sense to vote." It's that they both on the same team, right? Both of those sides is Republic, red and blue. That's the same team, right? And I generally don't agree. I think that oversimplifies things in a way is harmful to people who don't need to be harmed.
Okay.
But this is a very clear example of the validity of that.
So who's dealing?
Because Sam Bankman-Fried is in the pockets of. He was one of the largest Democratic donors.
The Dems,
yeah. In the last,
and he like cozied up to Clinton at like this big like crypto conference where he like invited Clinton to be like a speaker, and Clinton was like, "Hey, I heard about you. How can I want to get in on that? Can you tell me how to?" And he was like, "Yeah, for sure. You gonna back me up when some shit goes down? Because like some shit's about to go down, my man." And like Joe Biden was like, "And Sam Bankman-Fried, it's like these bros doing good things with the bros. Just want to make sure." Like Biden was shouting them out, so it was like, yeah, he was definitely getting ready, and they were like, "Yeah, we're ready. Like, what do you?
Thanks.
You have more of it?
More porridge, sir. More porridge, sir." So now the Democratic Party represents the regulatory body generally, and reinforcing the regulatory bodies, and so now it's like we have an opportunity to see how much do you smack your own hand now?
Yeah.
Are you going to hold your feet to the fire? And from what I've seen so far, his feet didn't get cooked so hard.
Yeah.
They didn't char his feet like they'd like to char, like they try to char Dick Cheney's feet. There's certain people's feet who they try to char when they get a chance, right? They didn't try to char his feet. And it's plays to the point that it's like I've been having a discussion recently in this business I'm working on of if there's any utility in using an NFT right now, right? For somebody's business. And one of the people, he's like, the reality is an NFT is a Ponzi scheme. If you go into it accepting that, it's fine.
Right.
But don't try to And because of that, he's like, I don't think that it's the best use of energy right now. I don't disagree.
Mm. But you don't want to get left out. I think historically knowing you, you're one of the people who've always been like, I don't want to get left out of it just because.
No, it's not. It's not even that. It's like I don't believe any story anymore about these things. I get that because that's where all the swing happens. The swing happens in the stories, right?
Yes.
Okay. Because I've done the research, okay, this is a hard point to make. It's all about time frames.
Mm-hmm.
An NFT is a Ponzi scheme, but so is the dollar. It's just what your time frame
Yeah.
is.
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree.
What's your
Like
bus
you said,
time frame?
religion is a cult plus time, right? Like anything you add enough time to it, it becomes an institution.
Now it's meaningful to budget time properly because the time span might for an NFT might not serve any utility in the now, whereas the dollar still has a utility right now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like trying to bank on the time span of when the dollar busts. It's not a good idea.
Right.
It's not. That's not a good economic strategy.
Right.
But you can't ignore it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a part of the point is that you know how you know you can't ignore it because despite all of this shit that's going on in the NFT, how vaguely people understand it, crypto, NFT, any of it, how vaguely people understand it, how it seems like the farthest out far. Like I remember when we were kids and like first getting on AOL, and then there were kids who were like building their own computers, and they seem like to be on the. This seems like that, like this edge of the technology world. And most people are never going to be like, I don't want to try to understand that. Why the fuck would I be trying to do that? I have no utility in my life, right? Even though it's that vague and it's crashed this much because of this much bad press, what is it? What's Bitcoin at right now?
It's still, I mean, it's still so huge, right? Like it's not like even with that
money in there. There's billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars there, all the same. Right?
Okay, so here's a question: has that materially? Because like you are a person who's in that world and has knowledge about it, etc. Has that materially like helped you? Like, can you like bring it home for us in that way? Like, show us like, yeah, well, me knowing also helps me or is helping me.
Not as much as I want to.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so I'll just be specific. I'll stay in what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. You know, I was early in on Bitcoin, right? Like I was around, right? Yeah. But I am not a techie person. I'm a money person. I understand money well. I understood the utility of it as money.
Yeah.
Like this was like before, we're talking about 2014. I don't know what a wallet was, right? Like wallets and shit and so I was mining coin and I had an account and I had my passcode. I did have that, right? I still do. But the place I had the most Bitcoin that I never bought, I would just play these games that paid you out Bitcoin in the mining process.
Yeah.
And the place I had by far the most Bitcoin, once I understood, like, oh, I had a wallet, Coinbase, and I transferred it over, it got stuck. It got stuck. Gotcha. And the computer I had it on got stolen.
Oh, damn.
So I couldn't ever. So Bitcoin specifically has only ever, the utility for me is I never got into, here's the thing. Originally, I never got into Bitcoin as an investment though. I got into it I liked it.
Like as a novelty kind of?
No, as anonymous money.
Okay, got you.
It allows me to buy products I otherwise can't get. So it's like peptides. I like to buy peptides. I like to buy peptides that help with inflammation, that help build tendons and collagen, soft tissue. I like peptides that help with mental processing. There's something called CMAX. I've used CMAX before. I've used BPC 157.
Chinese shit. When you want to get some Chinese shit, sometimes you gotta. You know
I've actually only ever used it for peptides. That's the thing. I'll keep it a stack and say my original interest was like, yo, is this how I could buy acid? I want to find high quality acid, right?
Yeah,
but I never did. I was on Silk Road, or like this is Silk Road back then, right? I was doing all this as a way to get. I never wanted to buy acid from somebody who I could find. Basically, I was like, nah, no thanks, no thanks. I want you know what I mean? Anyway. But I never ended up pulling the trigger on that.
Yeah.
And so by the time I was actually using crypto for something, it was to buy my peptides. That's the only thing I've ever bought with it. But I very much like the ability to buy something not out of my bank account.
Right. And encrypted, right? Like, an
encrypted transaction.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, that utility is not going back in the bottle. That's a technological utility. And I don't have to be a techie to understand that. That's simple enough. It's like, it's a private transaction. Anytime I want to do something because here's the thing with peptides. Peptides aren't illegal. I'm just not supposed to be able to buy them as this only for clinical use, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not clinically using, but I could say I'm running an N of one experiment.
Right.
That's a clinical use. I mean, anyway, a private transaction has utility to a lot of people, to people who don't understand crypto or NFTs.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
First of all, privacy in general has like, I would say, increased in intrinsic value too. Because like in the digital age, like no one has privacy. 100%. We've also seen how much data gets traded on. So any ability, exactly. So
it's valuable.
It's
somebody else making tons of money off of my attention, and I'm not me, right? Like all this, I get attention on me, and people trade on that, right? Like, this pushes that out. Like, no, you don't get to see what I'm doing right now.
Right.
Only me and the person I'm transacting with, and it is on a public ledger, but that's not who we are. Is not public. You can see the transactions, but who we are is in public. And to go back to earlier, and one of the kids wants to, like, now Coinbase is trying to make me put my ID, right? Like, it's trying to make me, one of the kids wants to say, no, you know who this is. And the other kid is like, nah, that violates the basic principle of this thing.
What we're doing. Right.
Why would you do that?
This thing of ours.
To say, I agree with that kid.
Yeah.
You just want more money. You just know you'll get more money. All the sharks, big money wants to be able to regulate this. The government needs to be able to regulate this, and that trades on. They need to be able to go to our Social Security numbers, right?
Gotcha.
And it's like, nah, get my Social Security number off this, bro. No.
Right. So, do you think that there was any other way for this to go? Like, knowing the history of currency and fiat and all that, do you think there was any other way for this to go than to end up here?
No.
Okay.
In fact, I'm shocked that it almost seems impossible that somebody created Bitcoin, that a person understood well enough how to leverage all of the problems with fiat currency into a technology that
people
gained massive adoption, that it worked.
Right.
Like, that's insane. It's actually kind of insane.
Yeah. And I think there's this perfect storm too that happens with the internet, where early internet and even a couple different waves of it, there have been people who recognize that the publicness of the internet and the, like, the mainstreaming of it all and the attention grabbing of it all it doesn't serve every part of society or everything that we might want to do. Like there is some real value to things being private, like whether it's the value of like, hey, I don't want to know that about you, which no one seems to have anymore. Like no one at all. It's like I'm seeing there's like a TikTok trend of people sharing STI status, which is like, hey, erase the stigma. Got it. I got you. I got you on all of that part, except the fact that it has to be on social, like the ways that people navigate their careers now, which is like, it's actually dope that people are like, here are some ways to negotiate salary. Here are ways that we can use salary transparency as workers to become a little bit more empowered, right? But then there are the same people who are like, yeah, this shit's going down in my job. Let me tell you how I'm about to get these niggas. Like, yeah, like that kind of stuff is like, why would you? It just seems completely like counterintuitive. So I think it's great that crypto gives people the ability to have private transactions. I think it's also sort of inevitable that was going to go the way of currency, which is that like once people know that there's value in something, a lot of people will have interest in it, and some of those people will be maliciously motivated, and some of those people will be benevolently, and some will be neutral. But the maliciously motivated people are going to probably take that privacy aspect and turn it into like secrecy and turn it into like double dealing, etc.
So, yeah, I think that part in particular of whatever, my mind space, so it's not important. Do you want to stick on this, or do you want to move to Tory Lanez?
Okay, so let's talk. I'll explain Meg Thee Stallion versus Tory Lanez, which is now in I think an LA court, because that's where the shooting happened, or near in Los Angeles County. So this is the basics of it. Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez were somehow personally connected, whether they were friends with benefits or a Tory love affair is not certain. Meg Thee Stallion has given an interview about it, denying that they were intimately involved. That's kind of coming back to bite her because people are very focused on that part, whether or not she lied. Tory Lanez has had, since that shooting incident, one other dust up with an artist, August Alsina, where they basically, I guess, crossed each other in Vegas or something like that. And August Alsina was like, yo, like I heard you said something about me in the press. And then Tory Lanez basically like set it on him and punched him. And there was like some video footage of it. So Tory Lanez has somewhat of a reputation of being a hothead. Megan Thee Stallion may have marred her reputation in certain ways by going to an interview with Gayle King and not being 100% truthful. And the person who's in the middle of this, who does not have a famous name, is a friend.
Can I interrupt to say, is she involved in the court case?
Meg?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she did an interview?
Yeah. So, man.
Okay. Her legal team. Okay.
Yeah, like super, right?
She did an interview and said things that can be put on the record that aren't necessarily
just like
true.
Tory Lanez was tweeting and putting on Instagram. Tory Lanez did an Instagram live. He did tweets about it. Meg Thee Stallion in the initial part put out screenshots of text messages. They both did some really.
I don't want to derail, but you just reminded me. It's that aspect of everything being public and there being no value of privacy anymore.
Right.
And but then the problem of it being that when something is private, there are going to be bad actors, right? Yes. And so you can't put the value. You can't with anything. Right? Like once the technology is available, it's going to be used for every purpose, right?
Yes.
Right. 100%. And if there's more benefit to using it for negative purposes than to positive purposes, it's probably going to be used more for negative purposes than for positive purposes.
Oh, 100%. Right? And I think how that plays into this situation is, all right, so basically this is the way that the testimony in court, and this is me putting together multiple people's testimony and also some social media like run up to what happened, right? In the pieces that I can put together, Megan Thee Stallion, Tory Lanez as an item, maybe not an item, go to a party with their Megan's friend Kelsey Harris at an LA residence that turns out to be Kylie Jenner's.
Okay.
Kylie Jenner.
That's what that was. I
Yeah.
saw a video of just Kylie Jenner. Okay, now I
So
understand.
so Kylie Jenner, and so people are speculating on this part. This is all alleged. This is allegedly. Kylie Jenner and Tory Lanez were somehow connected in contact, and in some way, Megan Thee Stallion wanted to leave the party after those two were connected and are in contact. I don't know what the level of that connection or what the level of that contact was, but Megan
Let
Thee
me
Stallion
let
wanted
me
to.
break just to say that very much seems like Kylie's type, though. Yeah, I mean,
But
very a tiger-like nigga. Tiger.
first of
Come
all,
on, come on.
very much so.
Like,
So,
okay,
so
okay.
Meg wants to leave after whatever level of contact happens between Kylie Jenner and Tory Lanez, right? And this is a pieces of the story that again, that's the most speculative part, which is, was Tory Lanez with Kylie Jenner in some way? Were they alone? Whatever happens, multiple witnesses attest to the fact that Megan wanted to leave. Megan also said on the stand that she wanted to leave. Her friend Kelsey Harris, who was also serving as her personal assistant, we'll get into that later, also testified that they wanted to leave. So they leave the party. They get into a private car, as celebrities do. It's driven by someone else. Tory Lanez gets into the car. Meg gets into the car. Kelsey Harris gets into the car. An argument ensues. Whatever the nature or the content of that argument is, Meg says that she wanted to get out. So in her testimony, she said, "I want to get out of the car. I'm on Sunset Boulevard." She says and testified, "I knew I looked crazy. I was in a thong. I had taken my heels off, and I probably looked crazy. So I didn't really want to get out of the car, but the pitch of the argument had gotten to the point where she was like, it is in my best interest, or I don't want to be here, so I'm getting out. Like, drop me off on the street. I don't care. I don't care if I'm in a thong. It's whatever." So after that is where things get blurry. And after that is where the court of public opinion actually plays a huge part in the ways that this can play out. So essentially, the claim that Megan made early, she jumped out on the story once the incident happened. And the claim that she made, both by releasing screenshots and by going on Gayle King for the interview, is that Tory Lanez shot at her and the bullet hit her in the foot, right? There was also a hospital report that she had some injury to her foot from a gunshot or a bullet shrapnel, right? She spent some time in recovery, and then she came back on the scene and she maintained that story that whatever was happening, Tory Lanez shot at her and she sustained an injury, and it was embarrassing and she didn't want to press charges, but she eventually did, right? So that's the story that she came out with. Tory Lanez remained pretty much mum, although there were tweets of his that were kind of like subliminally like, wait till y'all see the truth about, wait, y'all gonna see, you gonna see, like, and like, look. So also in the interim, DaBaby has dropped an album, and has Drake dropped an album. On DaBaby's album, DaBaby said, look, Meg is a liar. She didn't want to be outed as sleeping with me and with Tory at the same time. And I had to go squash it with him. Drake also dropped an album where on a lyric, he claims that Meg was lying too. In the aftermath of the initial event, Meg used to be a rep/spokesperson for Fenty Beauty. Rihanna unfollowed her on Instagram, as well as did many other celebrities, which led the bloggers and the commentariat to be like, maybe Meg did something wrong here. Maybe everything she's saying is not completely true. But again, Tory Lanez has this history of, one, a gun charge, which he, in the panic of that night, said, yo, look, I got a gun charge. Like, this can't get out. And he apparently and allegedly, both according to Meg's testimony on the stand and the recorded testimony of Kelsey Harris, her friend, offered them $1 million to keep it mum. The other thing that the friend said to police is she sent a text message to their mutual bodyguard, Tory shot Meg, call 911. So that text message and the screenshots of it is part of what Meg put out on social at first, then eventually deleted. But also, that got out. That information got out. Yesterday, Kelsey Harris took the stand and denied everything she said to the police. The Tory shot Meg text, that Tory Lanez threatened her and Megan with a gun, And basically every part of her story, or very, very significant parts, because she was a witness of the prosecution. So the prosecution is calling her to be like, hey, these charges are against Tory Lanez. His name is Daystar Peterson. That's his full name. Which is some mad Caribbean shit. I don't know how Caribbean this thing is, but Daystar is a wild Caribbean name. Anyway, so in the case against Daystar Peterson, the prosecution is calling Kelsey Harris, Megan's friend, maybe ex-friend, to the stand to be like, hey, can you corroborate what you said to us in the statement? She gets up and is like, yo, actually, I'm pleading the fifth. And they was like, yo, you ain't got to plead the fifth. This case ain't against you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, can you just confirm that you said this to us on this recording that we have right here and submitted as evidence? And she was like, I plead the fifth. So
I plead the fifth.
So that very much complicated things because she is a central witness. She's party to whatever shooting or what altercation happened. And Meg, in part, is relying on her to say, hey, this is what you said in multiple forms and forums. Can you just repeat this in a court of law? But this is the part that I think public opinion plays in. So Meg gave what I would say was an impassioned testimony about getting shot, about making mistakes, that night she was drunk, that she really didn't think it was going to go down like that. She didn't know why the emphasis was on her sleeping with Tory Lanez, but she didn't want people to focus on that, which is why she said she misrepresented that in some of her statements. That has misogynist, sexist running wild and being like, yeah, you see, she a hoe. And I'm like, all right, like, who shot her though? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, who shot her?
Did she get shot? Like, did she get and how did she get shot?
Right. And so
how did she get shot? Like,
there's gunpowder residue is the only evidence. And the reason is, for some reason, the lead investigator on this case, this plays into the defense's hands really well. The lead investigator on this case did not trace the gun. Like, they didn't trace the discharge of the gun, the pattern of the bullets, or any significant logistical forensic part of the gun's involvement. And so now there's no evidence from the prosecution on how the gun was discharged. There's no fingerprints taken, which leads me to believe, look, if Tory Lanez is paying off the friend, I'm like, some detective made a huge come up, because why wouldn't you trace the fucking fingerprints on a gun? Like, in a drunken altercation between some superstars? Like, that could be a career-making case for you as a detective, or you could take a career-making bag under the table from Daystar Peterson. But that's neither here nor there. The other side of this is that, and this is the side that I don't think is talked about a lot, Kelsey Harris and Megan Thee Stallion are friends, right? She was her assistant. She was a person who Meg had on the payroll. But if you watch any of Meg's media in the years she's been, hyper famous, she's basically been like, yo, it's hard to be famous. Like, I can't trust anyone. I don't really know anyone outside of this circle of people. And that circle of people were there from the beginning all the way up. Like, apparently, Kelsey was a person who helped her to complete college. She was a person who, is living in the big old crib that she has. And Meg recently has lost her mom. So fame has even been harder for her because of that, right? But the part that I don't think looks good on Meg is, like, regardless of who she was sleeping with or how or for how long, I think when your friend is famous and you are not, and you are now, as the non-famous friend, in a romantic or personal relationship with someone else famous, and your friend decides to fuck them, I think that's going to slight you. Because Kelsey Harris is a person that, like, I don't know if she's fucking an R&B star unless she's right adjacent to a big rap star, right? Like, her life is probably going to go on. She's going to work at the Dollar Tree or wherever she goes to work, be an insurance claims adjuster, whatever she was going to do, she was going to do. But she probably wouldn't have been, like, fucking with Tory Lanez, or then maybe she would have, because Tory Lanez, like, whoever, like, whatever, right? Like, he might see her at a concert, but the way that they are relating as people already has this major imbalance. And I think there's something
I didn't perceive that part of it. So Kelsey is in that romantic mix as well.
The reason what Tory Lanez is saying and what his defense is saying is that Meg wasn't telling Kelsey that she was sleeping with him. And so that night at the party when they were all drunk and Meg is like, nah, we leaving. Tory starts saying, according to testimony, like, yo, you need to stop lying to your friend. You need to start lying to your friend about what you be on. And that is what makes maybe Kelsey raise an eyebrow, like, what's he talking about? And that's why they're all in an argument, as opposed to it's just like Tory and Meg having a thing. It's like, oh, so you fucking this nigga too? And Meg even says in her testimony, I didn't tell her that because I didn't want to upset her because she had a crush on him. Now, when you're an adult and you have a crush on a person, at least in my understanding, you're fucking them. Yeah, we're not in junior high school anymore where you have a crush on a person and you don't, like, you're in close proximity with this person. You have a crush on them, you're probably fucking them. And so I think that's what was happening. And Kelsey probably took exception to that. Now, that has a crazy theory spinning that Kelsey discharged the weapon and that it mistakenly might, which doesn't really track considering it was Tory Lanez' gun. Like that, he is the person who had a gun on him. Like that's the only person in this situation who had a gun on them starting whatever is happening. Is he had Chekhov's gun, so to speak. Like if it was on somebody and it was going to happen, it was going to be part of the drama, he was the person who had it in there. And so his involvement in it and his defense has been, this is a squabble between two women about my romantic relationship with each of them. And Megs is like, whatever squabble we was having, you shot me, dog. Like, and so
how did she get shot though? Like, cool, they were squabbling, and then you had a gun,
right? And in text messages, he even has said to Megan, even though he didn't admit to the shooting, he said, "I'm so sorry. I got really drunk. I'm sorry for what went down between us. I didn't mean to." So he had some probable awareness of how these text messages might be used against him. So he was careful with his words, but he did actually apologize, right? Which I think is an indicator of potential like knowingness of your involvement in something.
What? It's like his defense doesn't explain how she got shot, but he was present for what happened. So
right. So his defense has basically been, and the strategy has basically been one, drag Meg in the press, make her out to be a hoe or a Jezebel or whatever way you want to put it, and that her personal dealings and or her lies or her character is what has this in court in the first place. And they have some weak witness from like a building across the street who said that when they saw the gun discharge, the discharge and the flash from the muzzle was closer to Kelsey Harris's body than to his body. That's their defense is basically, can we drum up enough doubt that he wasn't the actual shooter? So that the jury has to be like, well, there's doubt.
Who is she? I would have trouble trusting a forensic expert's opinion on that opinion just given of who's closer to a muzzle flash.
Yeah, no,
it could be completely true. It could be 100% true. I'm just not trusting.
It is flimsy, my guy. Like it's super flimsy.
I see what you're doing there. No thanks.
But you know what's the crazy part?
But I will say,
tell me,
as a former paralegal, ton of doubt. Ton of doubt.
Yeah.
I can't pretend.
I can't pretend that either.
Ton of doubt.
There's a whole lot of doubt. And here's the thing. The way that the defense has cast aspersions on Meg Thee Stallion, like you asked your original question, if she hadn't said none, she would be in a better position. But I think there's a couple things that make this case intriguing, at least in nigger news. You know what I mean? And one is that there's definitely a gender aspect. There's a gender stereotype aspect on both sides. There's like because even Meg in her testimony said, look, I ain't want it, like with what was happening. It was summer 2020, George Floyd, black men get killed by police. I wasn't trying to like call the cops on him, even though I knew he shot me. So she was being pretty honest about that aspect of it. But let's not get it twisted. She was also becoming very famous, right? And so she said, this was the height of my fame. I'm feeling embarrassed about what may happen to me. And based on that Drake lyric that I just cited, she was like, look, the music industry is also a big boys club. And I knew this would affect my ability to do business, which it has. It has affected her. I don't think it's made her not a top selling artist or not have legions of fans. She still has all that. But this trial and this incident certainly is not going to play well into her reputation as a person who can be trusted to keep their word or be saying what is true. And the other part of that is that even in the interim, because many people have commented on it, but our fave, Azalea Banks, she commented on Meg Thee Stallion's career at one point. And with Azalea Banks, it's like almost everything she says has just that one little kernel of truth that's like surrounded by like just wild shit. And I think the kernel of truth she had, he said what?
The original Kanye.
Yeah, she's the OG Kanye. She's for real Kanye. So she had said when Meg was first getting famous that a lot of people are going to use her in this year when she's mourning the death of her mother, and they're going to be able to do it pretty easily because she's new to the music industry, she's a woman, and she has a drinking problem. Because almost that whole first year, a lot of the clips you would see was like, oh, drive the boat. I'm taking shots, drive the boat. That was her whole thing, right? Even on the song with the baby, he said, yeah, me and Meg, we about to drive the boat. So I'm like, oh, they drove the boat somewhere. And that specific quality and trait of hers is not going to help her. But then also with Tory Lanez, it's like, this dude was sort of like an urban radio hit maker. And I think that any amount of jail time is going to hurt him. It's going to hurt his reputation in a big way. But then also like, it's going to be more of the same in terms of how Black artists are perceived, which is like only y'all would be in some shit like this. Like this whole type of you shooting at each other, you getting drunk, like that's overall going to hurt them. And so that those multiple levels of intrigue between like the ego part and like the Black gender dynamics part and the fucking celebrity part has made this sort of like a trial of the moment kind of thing.
It's I'm thinking about like what the likelihood of any of those three people, the baby, Meg, or Tory, like the longevity of their career. And it doesn't like it's so it's like
I'm tempted to say that Tory has the best shot at having a long career.
Easily.
I'm tempted to say that.
That was I almost didn't put him in the same category. Like, what's weird is that Megan and the baby's career both expired at the same time.
Yeah,
like they went stale. I'm not saying it can't, but like right now they're both. It's like okay, that we saw that was a thing. It was like this thing, that thing happened, and it's done, right? Like, and it's weird because they were very famous. I'm trying to think of like people in other eras being that famous and having no potential for longevity, right? Like even like Noriega, he's not even as famous as them, right? But he has a second life as a like I can't even see a second life kind of thing, right? Like
because they haven't shown that level of versatility quite yet, right? But I would say this. I would say that Meg's most recent album had more introspective work and slightly more sonically diverse work on it. I do think that like sonically, musically, Tory Lanez is a couple leaps and bounds ahead of the others that you named. And I think that like, look, a couple really major cities was rocking with Tory Lanez for a minute with some huge hits that he had. And I think more recently, and this was actually what Meg testified started the big part of the altercation. She basically was like, you ain't shit, like in terms of his music and his reputation in the middle of that altercation in the car. And he was like, well, you ain't shit. And that's when it sort of started to like, but, I think he had a really hot start and he had some like certifiable hits. And even people like Drake kind of copying his style and like his signature moves. And then he kind of showed himself to be maybe in character very limited and in terms of the ways that he handled that fame. And that was what's holding him back. Whereas like Meg has probably had the converse issue where her character, her root forableness has catapulted her to maybe past what the merit of the music is, and that's just my subjective music opinion. Like she's dope, she obviously can rap her ass off, she has great presence. The rap stardom is not just made up of how you make raps, it's a lot of other things, and she qualifies on a lot of other intangible levels as well as being able to capably make raps. So I do think that there's also some there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, where I don't know if this level of fame is going to be there for any of them for a long time, but this situation kind of it spikes what can happen to any of them too. It really tanks what can happen.
It's the 15-minute-ness of it all, right?
Yeah.
It's like it put it put in fact, oh man, here's the thing about, and I say this all the time about fame and infamy being synonymous with one another now. People can't tell the difference. Like Tekashi 5 9 is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
He became famous through infamy, right? But Kim Kardashian is another example of that, right?
Yeah.
But what Kim understood, and I've never acknowledged this, is that you have to turn infamy, or it gets spoiled. It spoils his fame really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like heat. Like it's like heat. If you put heat on meat, it can make it good. It can make it like edible. But if it's like too much heat, it's gonna burn it. Too much heat in milk is gonna spoil it. So it's like, yeah, it's heat. You got to use it like at the moment, and then not anymore.
So her brand is actually, weirdly enough, her brand is family, right?
Yes, it is.
Sexy. It's the sexy family.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They sell family, their familyness.
Yes.
So when you play like Tekashi, right? He played that infamy hand, but it never rounded out into anything more other than maybe being a clown. He could have leaned more into the clown part.
Yeah. Because he has a natural sense of humor for sure.
Been more funny.
Yeah.
But because he leaned too much on the infamy, burned him.
Yes. Yes.
Spoil. It's that Andy Warhol's observation only gets more and more accurate. And I don't fuck with him, but that's the proof of when you created something meaningful, right? Where it doesn't matter how I feel about you. It's like, man, see, the weight of it only grows over time. It's like fame is becoming a
shout. This is where I gotta ask you about your boy. We gotta transition to this next one. What is Dave Chappelle's brand right now? What is Dave Chappelle's actual brand right now? Because I'm confused. I'm not even asking that in a way where I'm like being tongue in cheek. What is his brand?
It's he wants you to understand a rich guy. See it from a rich guy's perspective.
Oh man,
that's the basis level, because he's like, no, but I'm a nigger. I'm a nigger, and I had to work. I didn't have family money.
Out? That's the thing. Like, I know he's an innovative dude with comedy and points of view, but has that ever worked out? Like, see it from the rich guy's point of view. Honestly, only Donald Trump has really made that work.
But this is the point. Well, I think that here's another part of the point. Anything else would be fake. He's just being honest with us, kind of, and we're growing apart.
Yeah.
That it's just shit that it's really kind of just shit that happens. It doesn't look great, right? It's like it doesn't feel great. It never feels great. No relationship feels great when you grow apart.
Can I use the time machine for a second?
Yeah.
All right. If 10 years ago, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, Elon Musk, and Dave Chappelle had been on a stage 10 years ago, like same thing happened, but 10 years ago, what do you think the public reaction would have been then versus what it is now?
People would have thought that was awesome 10 years ago.
Yeah. Right.
Everybody would be like, "Oh, that's crazy! The dude from Tesla, the PayPal, the bald PayPal guy, when he was still like kind of bald, halfway bald, shit." You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean?
Who would you? Okay, if you had,
it would have been a block party. It would have been Block Party 2.
Exactly. If you had your time travel self, right, and all your time travel self could say was one of these dudes is going to be a supervillain in 10 years. Who would 10 years of you 10 years ago you have thought would be the supervillain?
My instinct is so crazy was Talib Kweli.
Exactly. First of all, that's the only right answer. That's actually the only right answer. It'll be like, nah, Talib Kweli.
So it's like, see something off about you emotionally. I've seen some things from you recently. Something's not. You got some things to work out.
Something's off, buddy. I know you're not going down the right path. And then to say that right now, it could be like it's Elon Musk is the actual answer of who's the supervillain. But then like the fact that Dave is like a little like you have to question whether he is.
It's the weird thing is, okay, I don't pay enough attention to Elon Musk to like confirm he probably is the worst, right? But in a lot of ways too, it's like I think from Dave's perspective, he's just like, I wouldn't say he's just like he's a guy who you agree with on certain things and you don't on other things, right? And
I think that's generally what he is too. Like as much as he's been whatever on Twitter, like I think he's probably generally in the world just a guy. Like
he's just a guy with ideas, bro. And that's another thing. It's like put it in context. Like, okay, here's me being Dave Chappelle for a second, unfortunately. But it's just like people go, oh, he comes from his daddy's money, and then all those businesses, the government, you know, all government infrastructure. It's like none of those created a business plan, though.
Yeah.
Like you can't take away. He did things.
He did those things.
He did fucking things, man.
And I'm sure that Dave relates to that too, right? Like that there's some level of work that goes into being whoever those two people are. There's just some level of work that goes into it. It's not all like I'm a supervillain, and like I made people take low wages and I invented nothing. Like it's not, and that echo chamber view of him, it actually does us all a critical thinking disservice because it had people really thinking that Twitter was going to crash. Now, I do
and rewriting history.
Yes. I do think Twitter is in some danger. I do think he's doing things that are disruptive to both Twitter and to his company.
Definitely fail
and his reputation.
But being, you know, like
drumming it up. We were drumming it up. Everybody was like, this is gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's inevitable. And it's like, no, it's not. Actually, there are a lot of great people who are involved in a product like Twitter, and it's not gonna just spontaneously crash because someone made unilateral changes.
And unfortunately, the problem is when we create this hysteria and it's not confirmed, then all the rationale that was put behind the hysteria gets thrown out as if it's not reasonable when some of it is, right? Now he seems like a genius for working on a 15% staff and getting the same results.
He also seems like a genius for going into an already made company and an already made product again and not letting it collapse immediately, even though he made a bunch of big changes that were not helpful to workers, right? So those things like don't get kept. The baby goes out with the bathwater. But then the other part of this, like the Chappelle thing that really, I don't know, that's stirring me is I think you were one of the first people to explain to me that like Chappelle had this incisive view of race from his point of view, right? It was like race because he is a black man, which got then assigned to him as a more like class aware point of view, a more like broadly black point of view that he never had, right? People had to project those things onto him because he had this kind of brilliance from his point of view as a black man, right? Now, if he still has some of that, and I think he does, actually, I think he does still have that point of view. My question is, how did he reason that, ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for the richest man in the world? Like, how did he like calculate that was going to play out? Is that a joke? Like, is that part of a joke that he's kind of making? And he's like, whoever gets it.
It kind of has to be. What other reason would you have Elon Musk? Like, besides the fact that I can get him, though. I can get him.
And also, can he pay you? Can he just straight up pay you to be on stage? Like, is that maybe something that happened?
Who?
Can Elon Musk say, hey, I'm gonna give you this bag and I want to make an appearance. What do you think? And Dave Chappelle's like, yeah, fuck it. Like,
so, and it's like, I think okay, here's what it is. A part of it is like, we want to be mad at Dave Chappelle for the fact that we have to get over the fact that we don't like him as much anymore. We're like, no, change back. No, change back. It's not okay for you to not be who I don't like.
Oh,
and
man.
It's like, nah, it's like, it's not even that far off who we liked, but it's not. And so it's like, just deal with your feelings, bro. Like, just deal with your fucking feelings, man. Nobody did you a disservice because they made you feel. I have to be wary.
That's real. That's super real.
Our because of real stress, like, I don't think our parents' generation ever actually dealt with the stress, the PTSD of Vietnam. And we lived in the wake of that, and then all kinds of things, right? But as a result, because at a basic level, the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between physical and emotional pain, when a person makes us feel something we don't like, we think they did something to us.
Right.
And that we have the right to say they have to do something different because it's not something that we like how it felt.
Oh, can I offer a counterpoint to that? I actually agree with what you're saying, but here's the counterpoint I want to offer. Let me plug my computer in, but it's significant and it's worth mentioning, which is why I would even offer a counterpoint, which is that in the transactional agreement that is fame, and it can be an implicit agreement, it could be an explicit agreement, but it's a transactional one, right? We confer fame on people usually because they are lifting up a value that we have in part established with them, right?
Yes.
Like Dave Chappelle is not famous if we don't find him funny. If the things from our experience that he has very deftly and with his hard work turned into value, because like, one, we conferred the value on him, and then he said, oh, that's valuable, I'm going to show that value in the world. So if those things that we've agreed upon, those values, were shared, it's all right for us to say, hey, we don't share them anymore, and we're sore about it, and because we liked supporting you. And when we were supporting you, we were also, because we're humans, we have egos, we were supporting us. We were supporting our point of view. Now, whether or not you get over it is a varied thing among individuals, right? But I think the collective pain of a Dave or a Kanye doing these things for folks who look like them, not for any of their other broader group of fans. Their broader group of fans gets to enjoy them as they are on the merits of their jokes for their reasons. But the people who specifically occupy their bodies and their type of life experience, they're like, yo, we don't get shit. So when we have the little value of our attention that we confer upon you, and then you are like, actually, I needed this to make this come up, and now I'm about to shit on it. I think it's just understandable cause and effect wise why we're like, come on, dog, you like, fuck, like you. And then I individually am willing to move on from it, and I'll talk about it and I'll move on from it. But I can understand why the collective is still in this, like, oh, god damn, like the collective is there. You know what I mean?
I thank you for that. Was brilliantly worded. But it's the way you were able to, and I'm not, this is not me. You know that my perspective is we all need to actually be able to be the dentist, right? It's the Chris Rock joke.
Yes.
The moral dentist. I don't need to be I don't need to be Jay-Z every time and come from, but so I'm not asking everybody to be as cogent, both mentally and emotionally, as you just were. But I am valuing that above any individual sentiment.
Yes.
Right. So I don't have to. It sucks that Dave might have arbitraged.
Dave got on the culture. He got on the trans train. I don't know why. He just on the trans train now.
He pawned our culture It's like we let him hold the culture and he pawned it.
Yeah.
And I have every right to be upset about that. But I can still value the way he's communicating where he is, right? I'm not confused about what's happened. He's very much communicated to me how he's gotten
Yeah. He's charted it for us too.
right. So this is my point about like, yes, but also don't take responsibility for your reaction, right? Because it's not as if he didn't just elbow you in the chest out of nowhere. He didn't Kanye us, right? He didn't do that.
Wow,
right?
that's so true. That's so true. But here's the thing: I think they was both dropping Easter eggs the whole time.
That's also my point.
Yeah,
He's always been this dude.
Yeah,
He's always been this dude
That's
who
true.
said it clumsily, but
Yeah.
said what he meant very directly in a way that was artful. There's art to that, like unvulnerable, that vulnerability, that unfiltered, unguardedness.
Yeah. It's why their words, both as a comedian and a rapper, which is like that says a lot about, and that's like hurting my head a little bit, like how famous a Black person can be, and it's almost always in a entertainment or amusement position, and how much power that holds because it's like the only power that we're allowed to get. Even Barack Obama is included in that. Not even we're not going to stunt.
Why he was president?
Exactly.
He was famous.
He was famous. He was an entertainer, right? And so that kind of doesn't sit with me well. But then also the crazy power of their words, where they basically, in both cases, affirmed in their early work what they was going to be. You know what I mean? Like 18 years, like got you from now you're paying it for 18 years. Like that is literally happening to him. Dave Chappelle was just like, yo, he was telling us from Jump Street that this was going to happen with skits like, the reparation skit. It's like, rich, biatch. It's like, nah, now you can't tell me nothing. I got some money.
Every episode, I'm rich, biatch.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So he was telling us, he was affirming, he was setting out mantras for us to know. And we was like, nah, we don't want that part. We only want the part. We only want the part that's the fantasy of that. But if you really become that, now we're out on you, which is like, yeah, we got to own some of that. The collective we got to own some of that.
Own that. And it's because we're putting too much of ourselves. Here's why. We're putting that is a symbol to me that too much of what we want is being foisted onto these people.
Yes. Onto individuals again.
We're only experiencing it through them.
Yeah.
And it's because they represent a belief in yourself that is hard for us to have. We get it. So when somebody does it, we go, look, thank you, because actually navigating this shit is painful and
that's real,
soul crushing every day, right?
Yeah.
So every time you win, and you win being somebody who I recognize, you didn't change to win. You're somebody who I still recognize. I feel
recognize myself in too.
Right. But then we'll also hoist blame onto these communities for not fixing how it is here. But it's like, but I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
I'm here not trying to. I'm reserved to this structure that it's like this here and you get out. The in and the out, we also are a part of creating who's in and out.
Yo, you know where this applies to? And it's bothering me that it's so universal, especially with Black men, especially with Black entertainers. The Deion Sanders situation, where it was like, damn, like he did sell the community a dream for sure. He did also do a lot of great work in Jackson, Mississippi, and at Jackson State. And he also took a bag when it was, convenient, when it was advantageous to him, right? Which I also can't personally blame him for. Like that is part of his like individual and even potentially like collective vision. Like, yo, I need to take the best opportunities available to me. Like, no matter what happens, like, isn't that me taking care of myself and therefore like being my truest self in the world? Like, yeah, and it really is. And it's just sad that like oftentimes that's the only bargain, that's the only way we get to show up. It's like we're entertainers and we either, flame out or sell out. Like there's literally no in between. There's so few. Like we've talked a lot about being like comfortably famous, and it's like that's because on the other ends of that scope, there's some real tragic shit going on, like that you shouldn't have to stomach.
So I've never thought about that, Drew, and that's so. When you consider like the primary ways that I'll speak for myself as a child growing up in what's referred to as the inner city, I thought of like getting out was fame. They were fame. They were athletic or musical fame, right?
Absolutely.
And I've never tracked, still having had that experience, I'd never tracked that. I didn't have any examples of that working out in the artist's benefit. Like ultimately, long term, like Prince.
Not ever, my dude. Not ever. Here's what I was saying.
I got one, and Magic Johnson, and it comes at like surviving death.
I'm like, are we gonna do that?
If you have to survive.
Are we gonna talk about that?
Right? It's
like that shit nearly. I'm gonna throw another name out there. I'm gonna throw two names out there. Actually, first I'm gonna throw the real like crazy name out there for you, which is, and this is part of the story I'm writing. I'm about to drop this next story. I'm gonna send it to you. But
okay,
all right, Beyonce.
Yeah. Yes. But okay. Are we gonna get into this? Are we gonna get into this?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
She was created for this.
Yes.
And that thing is a weird thing. It's a weird thing that was always. It's like have you ever seen the movie School Days?
Yeah.
Right. This is center to her, how she was always raised.
Yes.
Right. Like Eric is from Houston. I know what neighborhood she's from. Right. It's like, nah, this is very centrist. This was always intended to make everybody happy, to be it's the most light-skinned shit in the world. She is professionally light-skinned.
Yeah, wow.
She's in the exact middle.
Yeah.
She's not too light. She keeps everything as black as it needs to be black.
Yes.
But at the absolute edge of light-skinnedness. Her brand is absolute light-skinnedness.
Yes. No,
it is perfected light-skinnedness. It's Kim Kardashian. They're like parallel. They never cross. They're parallel careers.
Yes.
But she had to have talent. Kim could come with just infamy because of her tone.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But so yeah, it worked out. But that's because it's like kind of fundamentally sick, maybe.
Yeah, and look, this is what I'll say. It ain't worked out for no black man. And that's why I was going to float the second name to you, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Well, because now
who is he? What is he?
Dwayne. What is Dwayne?
That's the thing.
And specifically him. It's not the rule. Because if he wanted, right, we'd gladly.
Right.
But that's not he.
He ain't on that. He ain't on that
his
time.
He's
on a different type time. He on a different type of time. He ain't on that time, G. He ain't on that time.
Yeah.
Like, nah, I seen what that made, and I'm not doing that.
So it's to go back to that point.
This nigga remade Everybody Hates Chris, but he was like, it's just not black now. He's like, it's the same essential sitcom, but it's just like, no, but he ain't black. So he's The Rock. So now it's everybody. I was like, he turned, because that's the crazy shit about race and about anti-blackness is like, you already know, because you put me on to how that's a classic sitcom. That's a classic sitcom that Chris Rock made and made Tyler James Williams low key the star that he is now, right? Like lowest of keys, put him on, right?
That show is so great.
So good.
Underrated. Everybody knows it's underrated, but it's like because of how long it was on, if you think about how many funny episodes there are, how many good episodes, it's up there with almost any show. Like if it's going good episode, funny episode for funny episode.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. And The Rock was like, yeah, but it's black. So nobody's going to know about it. So I'm going to make it and make sure people don't think it's black.
And so they know about it. And they watch it.
You really did that. You really did that. And so they are the exceptions that prove the rule. Beyonce and The Rock are the light-skinned exceptions that prove the rule that you can't be a black man and famous. You can't be a black man and the most famous. Like you literally can't be. Like you will die.
I think we talked about this before, but so now I have to go into Michael Jackson, right? Because Michael Jackson is, I don't know.
I gotta be a white woman. He said, the way y'all treating me, I gotta turn into a white woman.
I don't think James Brown was not more famous than Elvis.
He wasn't.
Right?
He wasn't.
Michael Jackson is the first time the most famous man in the world is black. In the world is black.
Yeah. Especially in the era of global media. Like, because there may have been other eras where media wasn't widespread enough where you could potentially argue that there were folks who were more or as famous or one of the most famous black people. You might say somebody like a Pele before global media.
Jack Johnson,
Right. So that potentially, but in the era
like confirmable,
right?
It's like you can't make a really reasonable argument about anybody else in the time he owns, right?
Yes.
Okay, so in the time he becomes the most famous person, that's when we watch him go from a black man into a white woman.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he was interviewed maybe two to three times about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he gave the explanation that he developed very aggressive vitiligo.
Right.
And that because of how much he performs, the amount of time it would have taken to put on makeup to take his original tone back.
Yeah.
It was easier to go the other direction.
Yes.
Okay. That is reasonable until I watch his face. Like, what does that have to do with your nose? Right? See, this is what I mean about how insane it is. How insane. It's like we listened to him say that like it made sense and go, okay, like that has anything to do with watching a black man be willing to turn into a white woman on the inside, to look at yourself and see yourself be this different and go, yeah, and I'm the most famous black man in the world. Everybody knows who I am, and I'm willing to do this.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Because it made sense to us. He didn't have to explain himself. We knew why he was doing it.
I mean, black people
required the whole world.
I'll say I agree with you on that whole world part. I think black people consciously knew, and white people on some denial shit are like, well, yeah, you know.
No, they didn't have to think about it. They could just they just enjoy it on the inside, like, oh yeah, he wants to be us. Like, look, he knows that being us is better than him. He's Michael Jackson, and all he wants to be is one of us.
Which is
any white person.
That is the wildest, that's the craziest shit that you could think. Because it's like, yo, he's like a literal superhuman, right? It's like if, because this is the other name that we could throw into the pot here. We could throw this name into the pot. It's like if Michael Jordan physically was like, I'm gonna become Dirk Nowitzki. Like I'm going to physically like dye my hair blonde. I'm going to change all my features. He had the means to do it. He could have done it, right? But the way I think that sports is a little different because the way that blackness is valued in sports is different. There is a specific value to your body that is positive in sport. Whether or not that remains positive or how long that can last is another issue. But your body is cherished. It's revered as valuable. Godlike. It's valuable, right? And Michael Jordan had the most valuable body as a black man, right? So, and he was one of the most famous for the thing he did. Now that thing is entertainment and it's like athletic accomplishment, but that form of entertainment and that form of amusement, it diminishes, it flames out, right? So it's like sell out or flame out, right? So as an athlete, you naturally, even if you're not willing to accept it, like many of them aren't, you naturally have to flame out. And that is the expectation.
So you're right. So even Magic Johnson flamed out. He flamed out brilliantly. He flamed out brilliantly and then has a second life.
Yes. Yes. Like a literal second life, which is wild to think about. But yes. This is a crazy discussion. Like I'm like, I don't even know if it could go another level.
Yeah, this was super fun.
This was super, super fun. But yeah, remind me to hit you up about the Kanye joint that I'm writing. I think I might have told you a little bit about it, but I'm gonna hit you up about it and send you a draft because it's like all this. This is all this.
I love it. All right.
Love you, bro.
Love you too, man. Peace.
Peace.